Y'all, we're in a series talking about the voice of God, how to hear it and how to discern it. Now I want to, and I said, and this is something I say in the beginning of every video because it's necessary. If you want to be confident about the things that God is saying, then you need to know, be confident of what God has already said. So you need to, get in your word, and get in a good teaching ministry, or get under good solid teaching y'all, where they're not trying to force an idea to fit, because I think I have been able to show you some things in the scriptures, concepts. They're not new concepts, but sometimes the way people present them, they twist the scriptures or try to, you really don't have to turn over anything. This is my goal, y'all. This is what I'm trying to drive into you. I'm trying to drive into you that when you're in a relationship with God, you don't have to look under any rock for him. He will plainly show you himself. And this is why I tell you to study the scriptures like you're studying a person. I mean, you don't have any other way of studying him, right? The same way you wouldn't have any other way of studying Martin Luther King or anybody else. You'd have to read about them, and you'd have to really engage yourself in looking at who they were as a person. Except we know that we're studying the person, and his spirit will help us to learn who he is if we give him that opportunity. And so we don't have to turn the scriptures over looking for things. There are a lot of things that are really there in plain view, and we just have to study and ask him the questions. I ask God questions, while I'm studying. So I know you grew up like I grew up. Your grandparents and parents, they had these warped ideas about God where, you couldn't ask him nothing. If you asked why, then, you don't ask God. He's God. You don't ask him questions. Yes, you can ask God questions. You should ask God questions. That's the only way to get to know anybody. You wouldn't go out on a date and not ask any questions. So in your relationship with God, you should be asking him questions. What do you like? What do you not like? Why did you do this right here? I don't understand, Lord. These people seem like this or that. So why would you send them out to kill? I thought you said not to do this. I asked God a lot of questions. I mean, if he was going to get tired of somebody asking questions, I'd have been dead already. So let me tell you, he doesn't mind questions. But the Bible says you have not because you ask not. So, we think of that in terms of material things because a lot of times we are material minded. But it means that in everything. It says that he who lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. So you don't get anything you're not willing to ask for. You need to ask God questions. So know what God has said if you want to know what God is saying. Now I want to start dealing with the leading of the Spirit. All right, so this is still under the voice of God. But I think sometimes what we fail to realize is that God does not only speak to us. So people want God to speak to you all the time, and yet they don't understand how to follow him. So, and the scriptures show us great examples. Like he told Abraham that he was going to take him to a place, right? But he didn't talk to Abraham all the way, right? So he gave him, he spoke to him, and then he led him to the place he wanted him to be. He does the same thing with Israel. He sends Moses. He speaks, let my people go. And he says where he's going to take them. And then he leads them in a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by night and a pillar of fire by day. And so there is a leading of the Spirit. And so I want to deal with, because you have to have balance, right? You have to have balance. And so I'm trying to present the balance here. And the balance of the truth is sometimes God speaks to us and sometimes God leads us. Now, when God started dealing with me in this area, because I was so used to hearing him all the time, that one day he gave me Philippians 2:13, in which I'm going to teach from, and then he went silent. And when I say silent, y'all, I mean he went silent for some years. And I was like, what in the world? But in that time period, he worked this truth into me, and this has been the foundation of everything. Now, this has made my accuracy ridiculous, because God gave me Philippians 2:13 and really taught me something about himself, and then he worked it into my life, and it's very valuable. So what I'm going to teach you here is going to be very, very valuable. Very valuable. Just trust me, it's going to be valuable. Philippians 2:13 says, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure." Now, y'all have heard me sort of deal with this issue in a roundabout way, but never directly in the leading of the Spirit. So now I want to deal with it as it relates to the voice of God. Because Jesus says, I call my own sheep by name, and they hear me and they follow me. And so you can see that he calls them. So there's a time when he speaks to them, but then there's a time when he leads them. And so this passage sort of sets us up with the idea of how God actually leads us. And so that's what I'm trying to help you understand. It says, it is God works in you. And so we dealt a lot with that inner world. Now, I've stressed this to y'all a lot, that the inner part of you is very important. A lot of us spend so much time putting so much effort into the outside of us, into all of the things that happen outside of us, that we are rarely sensitive to really what's happening inside of us. Now, it doesn't mean that what's happening inside of you is not happening. It simply means, like I taught on expectation, that when somebody doesn't tell you something is valuable, you just don't look at it as valuable. You don't acknowledge it, and so you expect nothing from it. But the inner part of you is way more valuable than the outer part of you. Your spirit is way more valuable than the outer part of you. And so that's why God says, I work in you. So I'm working in you. So when we deal with the leading, the first thing to know is that when God starts to work, it's going to start from in you and come out. Now, I've said this before. Most of y'all don't realize that the inner part of you is where everything starts. Before there was a house, there was an idea in somebody. Before there was a piano, there was an idea in somebody. Before there was an invention of a light bulb, there was an idea in. So when God starts to work, he works from the inside out, not from the outside in. And so he says it is God working in you. And then it tells us he works in you to do something. Get to will. Now, will means desire, drive, inspire. It means that God is going to give you the passion. God's going to give you a desire inside you to do something. And in Ezekiel, and I want to look at a passage in Ezekiel that's going to help us with this also. Let me fold my page here. That's what happens when you mark your pages. You think you mark your pages. Ezekiel 36, because I'm going to lay the groundwork for this by helping you understand 36:27. It says, well, let's start at 26. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments and do them. And so, again, God gives us a clue that helps us link what is in Philippians 2:13. He gives us a clue about what he did in Ezekiel 36:26 and 27. Because he says, I'm going to do something and I'm going to put it in you. And then he says, and I'm going to put my spirit in you, and my spirit will cause you to do something. And so now the word spirit is the word pneuma. And from that word, we get the word wind, breath, and inspiration. Well, it means breath or wind. And from that, we create our English word inspiration and motivation. So what he's saying, it is God in you who gives you a drive, a motivation, an inspiration to do something. And so that's important. So one of the things that you're going to need to understand when you're being led of God is that God gives you a desire for the thing he wants you to do. Now, this explains to some of you why there's certain things you feel drawn to. I mean, when you think about all the different things that you can do in the church, you'll notice that there's some things that you feel drawn to. And that is because something in you, the Spirit of God, is inspiring you. He's driving you. He's causing you to do what it is that he wants you to do. Well, he's trying to cause you to do it, but he's giving you a drive and a desire for that thing. And so for me, I had an insatiable desire for prophetic books. I just kept buying them and, buying this one and just kept buying them and studying them and reading them. And that was the area that was insatiable to me. Now, there are other people who have an insatiable drive toward salvation and evangelism. And they don't care nothing about the rest of the prophetic. They don't care nothing about pastoring. They don't have none of those desires. Yet so what makes the difference? It's because God is driving them. He's inspiring. He's willing in them to do something. Now, he doesn't only say that I'm going to will in you, but he says he wills in you. He works in you to will, to have a desire, and actually to do. And so the latter part of Ezekiel 27, it says, I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk. Cause you to walk in my statutes. So I tell people, when you're looking at the leading of God, first of all, there's going to be a drive. There's going to be a desire. There's going to be a passion for something that God wants you to do. Now, for instance, when I get up in the morning, and this is where stillness is important, because most people will not catch this. And then most of you miss it all the time because you won't be still. And let me give you another example. When I say stillness, I know people who go from ministry to ministry to ministry. None of the ministries are working out. They clearly have a desire from God to do something. But in order to find out exactly what he wants to be done, you have to just sit still and wait. Don't join nothing. Just sit still. There will be a desire for something that will rise to the top and continuously, because I told you the voice of God is consistent and persistent, so it keeps coming. That's the direction he's trying to take you in. So that's the direction you need to go. Now, there has to be desire, and there has to be, cause is opportunity or ability. So he says, I'm not only going to give you a drive to do it, but I'm going to give you the ability to do it. Now, not just the ability, but the ability and the opportunity. And he says, I'm giving you the ability and opportunity to do what? My good pleasure. And so, and I say that to go back to desire, that whatever God leads you to do is going to be good pleasure. There's going to be pleasure in it. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily like every aspect, but you will like what you're doing. So when I meet people who don't like what they're doing, I tell them it's not what God wants you to do, because God will give you a drive for what you're supposed to be doing. And if you don't have no drive or no passion, you're not going to do a good job. You're going to do a half job, and then people are going to wish you would go away. And we've all worked with those kind of people, because you can't just have a drive. You have to have, but you can't just have drive. You have to have the ability. Now, God makes sure that we have both. And when I go into the next video, I'm going to teach you the very value of both. So there's drive and opportunity, will and give the desire to will and to do. So you need to start asking yourself, do I have a desire from God, first of all, for this thing that God is leading me to? Now, he can be leading you into a job. He can be leading you to a new vehicle. He can be leading you to any number of things. But first of all, whatever it is, he's going to lead you toward his good pleasure. Now, do you have the ability to do it? That's the other thing that you have to look for. Do I have ability or opportunity? Am I saying I want to be an artist, but I can't draw? That's something I desire to do, but never at any point does God open up an opportunity, because God said at least open up opportunities for you to learn how to do or become good at what you do. So if you have a desire for something and you don't have God opening up the opportunity for you to do it, or doesn't give you the ability to do it, then it's not God. And if you have, sometimes people have the ability to do something, but they don't have a desire to do something. You need both. I tell people, look for both. When I get up and preach, I know which word I know what I'm supposed to preach, because sometimes I have a desire, excuse me, something flying around in here. I have a desire to speak on a particular subject, but I don't necessarily have the grace or ability to speak on it. So when if I don't feel that nudge from God to speak it, that gives me the power to speak that word out, then I don't say anything at all. Then I won't say anything at all, because I have a desire for it, but I don't have the ability to speak it out. And you'll see this when people get up and start stumbling all over their words, because they clearly have something that they heard, but they just don't have the ability to deliver it. And so, and this might happen in any number of areas of your life where you have a desire for it, but you don't have an ability. So it's probably just your desire, because if it's God, he's going to give you what? The will. He's going to work in you to will and to do. And so you need to start looking for that when we talk about the leading of the Spirit.